Hola, ¿qué tal, gente? We are back today talking about our boys of Santos Bravos. Now that it's been like what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks since they debuted, and they've been like full throttle doing their, or I think it's like been two weeks. But anyways, they're full throttle and full promo mode right now. They're promoting their debut single 0%, which is like super poppy. I feel like it's stuck in mostly everybody's heads that have listened to it. But as we all know, they hit the ground running with coming to Miami to do like some promo there, doing radio stations. They went to like the Latin Billboard Awards, and then they also have been doing some promo in Latin America, radio interviews, television interviews. They hit Despierta America, which is like huge. It's almost like if they were in the Today Show here in the United States, or Good Morning America. So it's giving them a lot of exposure to people that were not aware of the show, didn't watch the episodes on YouTube daily, are not tuned in because they're familiar to K-pop and they knew about this boy group that was being formed. So there's making them be reached to like a wider audience, because people who tune in into those channels, like who tune in into those shows, like the Latin billboards, Despierta America, and like the radio stations that they've been promoting on both in the United States and in Latin America, they're like, oh, who are these kids? Like, what's their vibe about? What are they about? Like, where are they from? Is this kind of like the new boy group? So it's opening the audience for them to reach out new listeners, basically, and have new people check out their music and learn more about them, and like get to know them and like connect with them, to make them also obviously have a bigger fan base, which it's the whole point of PR. It's not, obviously there's a lot of fans that we got to meet them, got to know them through Santos Bravos, but now with this PR blast that they're doing, hitting so many different types of mediums, because they're not only doing just radio over the air. A lot of radio stations have YouTube channels, so you get to see them and you get to not only hear about these new artists, but you get to visibly see them and like meet them for the first time, for those people that were not aware of who Santos Bravos is. But anyways, the reason I wanted to make this hopefully quickish video is to touch a little bit on this PR train that has been going, their promotion. Some things that I've noticed in some of the interviews they've done. Obviously, they've done so many. It's hard to keep up, especially for me, because I'm like, as a lot of you know, I'm a multi-stan, so I'm always consuming media from all the artists that I support. BTS doing drops, and Team recently like did their Korean debut, and also like trying to keep up with all the content that Santos Bravos is producing, which is a lot, between like their social media and all the interviews that they're promoting on, and their individual socials and like the group socials. So it's a lot, and on Weavers, like the first Weavers live, Team Avocado, But anyways, I just wanted to touch a little bit about some things that from the interviews that I have been able to catch and like kind of analyze some things that I've noticed. Starting off with, you can tell right off the bat that if you guys recall, I think it was like their third or fourth episode of Santos Bravos, they went through media training. So literally they were thrown into like, how would you respond if you were asked these specific questions? And they were thrown into having a panel. There's like a dog outside, sorry if you hear a dog barking. Having like a panel of like pretending to be media and just throwing out random questions. How would they respond, to see how quick they are on their feet, and if they're able to give out answers that are like politically correct, as far as not giving out too much information, not giving out statements that might be misconstrued, because the media loves to do that, take your words and like twist them, and like obviously still be friendly. How would they react to like questions that are like invasive and personal, or just rage beating? So in these interviews that I've seen, obviously I love that when they were in Miami, that it was mostly like, it was Gabi and Drew holding it down, because as we all know, Gawe, Kenneth, and Alejandro decided to go on a boat. They went all around South America. They told us themselves, they went by vote, and they wanted to tour all of Latin America before getting to the States. So that's why they were MIA for a couple of days. But during that time, especially for like the Latin billboards and like the press junkets that they had there, it was Drew and Gabby holding it down. So I love that Drew was able to, the fact that he's like the English speaking member, he was able to reach that audience and speak for the members and talk about their experience in Santos Bravos and what this group, what the group is about, like the different personalities that are within the members, you know, and like what the experience was, and what their vibe is, what they're hoping to bring to the music industry, like a fresh group, fresh faced. So I love that he was able to do his part with the PR promo to the English interviews, and also Gavi. You know, I love that we were able to see like, oh my gosh, their media training paid off, and then now obviously flip the page. Now that I'm doing like all their promos in Latin America, we are seeing like how well, like, they're such polished machines. You would not believe that it's only been 6 months since they started, not from they debuted, since they started their whole process to now being like an official group. So you can tell their media training and that they're able to think on their feet because they're so smooth. But I feel like you could tell their personalities coming out a little bit because in a lot of the interviews, Alejandro doesn't talk as much, and you see Kawe like really fielding a lot of the questions and just bringing out his friendly personality and just being able to like loosen things up and joke a little bit. And even if he messes up with the language, he like takes it in stride. But he's like so smooth with the promo, like with the media and like answering the reporters, the interviewers. And then also Kenneth, he's like so very well spoken, which is why they say that he is like, he's the youngest, but he's like very mature for his age. So I love that he's also showing that he can speak for himself and he's eloquent and he's able to articulate his sentences. And he is like the best PR that anybody could ask for, because every chance he get, he's like, plug, plug, plug. Santos Bravos, there he plugs the name. 0%, he plugs the song name. And he also plugged like we just debuted. And then he'll have like his little, I've caught it in a couple interviews that he brings the same anecdotes. So he already has like his key points that he's gonna hit. But I like that every person is, and always Drew is saying like how grateful he is about the experience, and like he's excited and he's looking forward to, you know, what this experience is gonna bring. And Gavi's more of like a little bit like playful, joking kind of guy. So they all round out everything together, right? So that's really showcasing now with all this like PR that they're doing, because it's like nonstop. Like when they say that they're busy and working, they mean it. Which brings us to the latest interview that I feel like all of us as Santos Bravos fans are aware of or have seen clips of at least. The only reason I watched this interview was because of like a clip that popped up for me on social media, and I was like, oh, they went on this show. So we're going to talk about it. Not at length, but just the things that I feel like a lot of us are feeling or thinking about is the interview they did with Los 40, the brunch. First of all, thank goodness that Pame was there, because she was like a friendly face to help kind of, I feel like she did a really good job of like actually talking about the show, talking about the program, explaining to the other host, I don't know her name and I don't want to learn her name, explaining to her what their process was, how it was 6 months, how like hard they had to train and how they had to work through everything. And Pame was asking like actually good questions, even though she already knew the members, she had already interacted with them. She was trying to bring back the interview to a somewhat like legitimate interview, not be super serious, but like ask good questions that listeners would want to know. Because remember, this interview is to expose Santos Bravos to the audience that the brunch and Los 40 brings, right? So if I'm just like a listener of the show and I've never heard of Santos Bravos, I would want the host to ask smart questions to give me that information that I need to know, like who are these kids? Where are they from? What type of music? Like what kind of training did they go into? Like what qualifies them to be musicians and why should I listen to them? So I feel like in a way I'm grateful that Pame was there, because she was able to kind of like rein things back a little bit and trying to make it somewhat of a serious interview. But on the other hand, you could tell that the host or the co-host, she didn't bother. She, first of all, didn't bother to do any research. Her team didn't bother to help her do any research. She was mostly like trying to just like joke around with like the members and just like I don't know what the format of the show is, if it's just more like a chit chat, kind of like The View, if you guys are aware of that talk show. If I don't know if it's more like a talk show, like we're just gonna chit chat and shoot the breeze. So she wasn't really asking any interesting questions. The interesting questions came from Pame and from the fans that were in the audience, because they asked them, like, you know, things like, what would you do if you were not a member of Santos Bravos? Or I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but they actually asked good, insightful questions. Like the fans asked questions that were thought-provoking. And also Pame, whenever like it would veer off, she would try to bring it back. I do want to say though, at one point they got to like, even though the fans were in the audience, I feel like they got a little bit too comfortable, where when the members were trying to answer questions, they were interrupting. And it was like, this is not a fan meet. This is an interview. Like, imagine what a listener that's just tuning into this program, what they're hearing. They're not seeing like the banter between the fans and the artists, because obviously Santos Bravos is not going to be rude and say like, hey, we're talking, or like ignore them. They're going to interact back. But in some instances, the fans like talking to the members was interfering with the interview. Even though the interview sucked at some points, they were still interfering in that interview process. So it's like, in some instances, the fans need to know when it's their place to be fans. Like when they were saying, we're going into music, that was your time to interact. When it was just the YouTube, then you could interact. But once they said like, we're going back on air, your job was to stay quiet and let the interview go on. You know, that's like my perspective. Now, to touch on the main thing that I feel like all of us are upset with, and it ties back to my hesitations about Kenneth debuting. Not that he didn't have the talent. I love that boy. He's super talented. But it was the sexualization of this 16-year-old. And my concern mainly was like with song lyrics or like song choices, right? But for some reason that hadn't come into mind. The sexualization that was going to come from third parties, from interviewers, which is like literally, we saw that here. Like some of the stupidest questions, like one of the segments was like, I got something like, ¿quién más? Or like, who blah, blah, blah the most, right? The first question, thought-provoking question, was like, ¿cuánto de ustedes ligan más de las chicas? And I'm like, they literally like 20 minutes ago, they told you their ages. They told you that they're 16, 19, 20, 21, and the oldest is 25. Why is your main question is like, which one of you guys can pull the most girls? Which one of you guys have hooked up the most? You know, because if you translate the word ligar, you could translate it as like hooked up, or like pull. Who pulls the most girls? Who's like the biggest, you know, hottie, I guess you could say. But I'm like, why are you asking that to like, the oldest one is 25, but even like 20, 21, and like 16-year-old Kenneth, that's like such an out of place question. Like, why are you talking about like their personal lives? They're not going to answer those questions. And it was even more annoying that Alejandra was trying to be like, oh, we're actually so busy, you know, but she wouldn't let him finish. She would just like make the question like a joke, like, right? Ha 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 ha. And I'm like, girl, you're annoying. That's the stupidest question. They're just debuted. They're not going to tell you about their personal lives. Obviously, we know they've dated. We know that Alejandro has still a girlfriend or had a girlfriend, but I know he's had a girlfriend at one point. I don't know if they're still together. It's none of my business. That's his personal life. So why are you asking them like that question? And on top of that, comments like when they were, at one point they got up to do a challenge with one of the fans, and the, you know, this host, she starts yelling, mucha ropa, ha ha ha. I'm like, what the hell? I think at that time it was Gavi and Gawe were up there. So it's like, they're 19, 20-year-olds. Why are you telling them they're wearing too much clothes? They're literally younger than you, lady. Like, that's so rude. Maybe that would fly if it was like an older artist, like mid-20s, late 20s. But this group literally debuted, and they're like young adults. Why would you say a comment like that? That's like so uncalled for, and that goes right back to the sexualizing members just because they're in a boy group. Yes, it's one thing to be like, oh my god, it's like it's a boy group and you know all the girls are crushing on them, but to flat out say which one of you gets the most girls and like practically saying like take it off, that's so rude. That's so disrespectful. And another point that shows that she didn't do her research, it's like, you know, if like the listeners want to like connect with you and they want to know more about you, like which one of your songs should they like listen to? And literally even Pame was like, what do you mean? Like their one song that they have, 0%, like their debut song, 0%, like listen to 0%. We literally just told you we just debuted 2 weeks ago and this is our first song, 0%. So why are you asking me which of your songs should they listen to connect to more? I'm like, are you not even listening? Not one, you didn't do your research, but two, you're not even listening. You're not listening to what the members are saying to you. So what is this point of, like, I feel like they stole an hour of my life. The most pointless 1 hour interview. I didn't learn anything new from them, with the exception of one of the fans asking like any like funny anecdotes that happened during the filming, where we learned that, you know, Gabi likes to buy shoes that are one size too big for him because it's just a habit. And then two, they asked, like, I love that they asked this question, like, how did you feel like, what was the moment like when you found out you debuted and then having to go on stage? What was that like? And then I love that Kenneth literally practiced this response, because he responded similarly in another interview, talking about, it gives us like a little behind the scenes peek of what they go through and puts us in their shoes. So literally he talked about how it was so chaotic because literally just found out who debuted. They're trying to like get their emotions together. They're trying to do a quick change, and they're hearing over here like, okay, time to go on stage. And over here it's like, you know, the choreographer saying like, don't forget your moves, don't mess up your moves. And then like over here they're being told, they're accused of like, okay, now so-and-so, Gabby, it's your line. Canada, it's your line. God, it's your line. And then you're hearing like the band saying like, okay, we're gonna start. And then you hear all the fans chanting, and it's trying to like, all that noise, taking it in. Like, I love that he talked about that experience. So the fan that asked that question, literally you should have been hosting the show, because that's the type of stuff that we as fans want to hear, and that's type of things that like listeners would be interested in. Like, oh, I've never realized that that's what like the process of a musician on stage, everything they go through, and like how they pulled it off, and how they carried themselves so professionally. So honestly, like that interview, and they kept talking about like, oh, you can't answer that because I can see your PR person back there. Their PR person was saying like, never again bring them on this show. This was a waste of time. Nothing new was gained, and they asked inappropriate questions. Now, in contrast, there was another radio show that I don't know if you guys have seen it. I think it's like Oye 89.7. That video is like maybe 15 minutes long, but it did such a better job of interviewing them and actually making them feel at ease than this other host from The Brunch did, because he asked interesting questions. He said that he was there in the moment that they were announced as like debuting. He was in el Auditorio Nacional. So he basically related with them right away. He like connected with them right away by saying like, I was there, I was in the audience, I felt how electric it was, you know. And he asked them smart questions, he asked them good questions, he made them feel comfortable. He also did like a little dynamic of like, which one of you is most likely to this, and they were able to be more relaxed and more playful because none of the questions were personal. So that's like a really direct contrast of like what a good interview can do and what a bad interview could do. Because like literally this guy in 15 minutes, he gave us more content and more information than what the 1 hour talk show, The Brunch, did. I honestly, like, the only positive outcome out there was like those 10-20 fans that got to be there, interact with them, and the 2 fans that got to do the dance challenge with the members. But like content wise, Oye, I think it's like 89.7 or 87.9, but one of those, that interview had more content. And this is why it's like, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, because yes, you're a new group, you want to be seen by as much people as possible, be heard by like a wider audience, but at the same time you get exposed to good interviews and bad interviews. So sometimes you have to like grin and bear it, because like literally, like I said in the brunch, Alejandra was trying to be like, oh, give like a politically correct answer of like, oh, you know, instead of like, no, we don't have a girlfriend, or I have a girlfriend, or like he gets the most girls, and throw out this we're playboys person I image, because that's the last thing they want to do. They just debuted like literally 2 weeks ago, and they don't want to say like we're playboys and already be seen as playboys. They're still redefining their image, and they want to sell this fresh, youthful image, not this we're a bunch of players, you know. So he was trying to be diplomatic and say like, we're actually been so busy, but she would not let him get a word in. Like, she would not let him finish the sentence until at one point Pame kind of like interrupted and started more of a conversation again, and even said like, oh yeah, but you guys have been really busy, right, with like the PR, you went straight into PR. And then Cabe was able to pick that up from Pame and say like, yeah, you know, like he answered a little bit playful at first, like, we don't want to say, it's not just like us saying that we're busy, but like he had to remind the lady, like I said, we just debuted and we literally got thrown on a plane and we started doing press in Miami, and then we flew on a plane and came here. And in between all those interviews, we're constantly practicing and rehearsing. We're like nonstop. And you can tell that they've been still continuing working, because of all the videos that they're posting on social media, all the little TikTok trends they're doing, just videos between each other. They did their first live on Weavers. On top of that, you can tell that from when they debuted to what we're seeing now, they're so much better vocally and like dance wise. They're so well synchronized, everybody's matching each other, and that just doesn't just happen overnight. That means they've been practicing and rehearsing. So when would they have time to go out and like hook up with girls? And also, that's not like what I want to hear about. If I'm getting into a brand new group, my first thought is like, oh, I like this group because they get with the groupies. No, I'd be like, this group is just a joke. Like, why would I listen to their music with all they care about is meeting girls and like hanging out? I want to listen to a group that's giving me good music and that's, you know, selling me this like wholesome. If I want my kids listening to these groups, I want like them to listen to a wholesome group that's like a bunch of guys that are like having fun and like vibing with each other. And yes, they're cute and everything, but that's not the main point, the fact that they're cute and they can like get girls. So that's the disadvantage of having to do media as a rookie group, because you have to expose yourself to situations like this and then just kind of deal with them, grin and bear it, so that you don't burn bridges in the future. And that's one of the things that it was like a little bit like of a sharp like cold water, I guess for me you could say, because it's like I personally had forgotten what the Western media circle is like compared to the Korean media circle that I've been so used to consuming the past couple of years, because obviously I've been listening to a lot of K-pop, so a lot of the artists that are listening obviously are Korean. So when we're watching Korean interviews, they stir away from this. They don't get asked like personal questions about who are you dating, are you hooking up with girls, things like that. They don't get asked that. They get asked like, tell us about this music video, tell us about your new album, tell us about what is the concept, tell us about what theme you're trying to, what message are you trying to like give to the fans, like what can we expect, which, you know, is what the music promo should be. You're promoting the music, you're not promoting your personal life. Whereas when they come, like even when Korean artists come to the States and do interviews, because I know they're still like barely breaking into the Latin American market. So when they've come to the States and even to the UK, the fact that there's a language barrier helps them a lot, because it prevents the Western media from asking them those questions. even though if you guys have been into K-pop for a while, when like BTS and I think it was NCT went on the Ellen DeGeneres show, she snuck that question in, like, how many of you guys, like, have you guys hooked up with your fans? So there will be those people that will try to sneak those questions in, but after a while, once that those artists became more popular in the US, companies like Hive, especially Hive, they can now say, like, they can say, I know that my artist is in demand, so I get to choose what award shows, I get to choose what talk shows they go to, and I get to tell you what you can or can't ask them, which is amazing because now they don't get asked those stupid questions of like, who are you dating? Or like, which one of you gets with the most girls? Or have you hooked up with your fans, you know? They get asked more about their work, their art, the song messages, the symbolism in the music videos. And yes, they ask fun questions about like, you know, like what's your favorite food? What artists are you listening to right now? What artists would you like to collaborate? Which is like a bit of an annoying question because why do they immediately think of like collaborations when it's like, let them be themselves, like let them establish themselves as, you know, their own. They don't have to rely on collaborations. Yes, it's nice to know who some of their favorite artists are because then it gets you an idea of like their personalities once we know like what some of the music they listen to. So, but yeah, that's one of the things that for American singers and like Latin American singers, it's like literally like no holds barred. They get asked like all kinds of intrusive questions. And that's kind of why I'm like, oh, that's the one thing that I'm like, it's gonna be continue to be a struggle, I know, for like Santos Bravos going on in the future as they grow, since they're seen, and it's good that they're seen as like Latin pop, a Latin pop boy band, because that's the goal, right? To be seen as like the next big Latin pop boy band instead of like a K-pop group, because they're not a K-pop group. K-pop is Korean pop. They were trained with the K-pop method, but they're a Latin boy group. So let's look at them like Latin boy groups. But the disadvantage with that is that the media is like, so I'm going to ask you what I've asked all the other groups before you, like what I've asked in CNCO, what I used to ask Menudo, what I asked like all these younger artists that are solo artists, like, who are you dating? You know, like, have you hooked up with your fans? Or what are your crazy fans like? Instead of asking them about their artistry. So it's gonna be a little bit of a bumpy road until they get their footing, until they're more established to the point where they can decide, like Hive Latin American can decide what shows they will go on and which ones they don't need to go on. Because right now they're kind of at the mercy of the media, because they need the media. They need the media to distribute the music and distribute the artists. Like distribute like, hey, there's this new, what's the word I'm looking for? There's this new product that you should check out. So they need the media to help them do that distribution. They can't just rely on us fans going to the YouTube pages and us fans following them on Weavers and following them on social medias. They need the mainstream media to disseminate Santos Bravos. So with that comes those couple interviews that are going to be inappropriate, that are going to be rude, they're going to be disrespectful, and they're going to be like clearly unresearched. And sometimes the host won't even care that they haven't researched. They're just like, I was told I have to interview this new group. I don't know who they are. I'm just going to read the script. Interview's done. Okay, bye. But that's going to be the growing pains of Santos Bravos being thrust into the media circle that is the media in North America. Because if they were a Korean group that just debuted, like let's say Cordis, I swear, they get given like such a different platform, because it's like, we want you guys are not allowed to ask them anything personal because they're not going to answer those questions. So if you want your interview to be good, you're going to ask them A, B, and C. So Cordis has also been doing like media promo because they literally debuted like 2 months ago, and they've already been in like the same Zach, I forgot his name. DBC radio with Zane, and then they've done another one with, I forgot the guy's name, Zach, that most of the K-pop groups go with. But the questions they've been asked about is about like their artistry, their music making, like their creating of the album, their musical inspirations, and things like that. And those are things that we don't see a lot of, not only American artists, but like Latin American artists get asked. It's like that's the last thing that the media wants to know. The media wants to know more about their personal lives than their artistry, which sucks, you know. But anyways, I just kind of went off on a rant. But yeah, I know that like this was like an interview that a lot of us have seen with the brunch, and like how the fact that the members were so basically disrespected because the host didn't do her research. She wasn't listening to the members as they were talking to her because she didn't even know that they only had one song. And she's asking them like questions that are not age appropriate because you literally have a minor that's 16 years old sitting right next to you, and you're asking like which one of you guys can get with the most girls, and like you're wearing too much clothes. Like, yes, she wasn't directing it at Kenneth, but she's directing it at a member of his group. So she's sexualizing Kenneth because of proximity, and that's just like that's not okay. So I'm hoping that like going forward, Hive Latin America is able to, yes, even though they're at the mercy of the media, accepting to interview Santos Bravos, which is a really new group, because even Latin America is very new in the Latin market, so they don't really have a big footing to put their foot down and say like, we're a big corporation. It's literally like, you're new, what are you telling me how to run my job? You need me to promote your artist, so deal with it. But I hope like going forward, Hive Latin America can be a little bit more like, yes, I need you to promote this artist, but I also need you to be respectful or remember that there's minors. Because literally in that interview, before this girl made the comment about ¿Cuántos ligan más chicas? Literally like 10 minutes before, Pame had told her like low-key like, hey, just don't forget we have some minors here and in the audience. And even then the girl didn't even listen and made that comment. So anyways, I just wanted to get in here and give my perspective on how I saw things and how I hope things are going forward, and like the difference between like a good PR, a good promotional interview, and a bad one, like how it can affect how you don't need an hour to give a good interview. You literally can do it in 15 minutes. You can give more context, more content, connect with the artist, have the artist connect with the interviewer, connect with the audience. Helps you get like a good vibe of what this group is like, what their relationship is like, how they get along with, the type of personalities they have in like a short amount of time, just by asking smart questions, doing your research. Because that interviewer from Oye 89.7, you could tell like the fact that he went to Auditorio Nacional, he was obviously maybe like a fan, or maybe he just went as part of the press. But he paid attention and he took notes, and he was able to ask those like interesting questions that kept them engaged and make them excited and happy to be there, because they were always like smiling during the whole interview. Whereas with the brunch, multiple points they looked uncomfortable. Like, good thing that Drew couldn't understand everything. And also I want to say shout out to our boy Kenneth, our translator, because he was always translating to his big brother. That was so cute. That made me love him even more. But anyways, I just wanted to come in here and talk to you guys about my perception of that whole interview with the brunch, and also how there are interviewers are there that actually do their job and do it right. Hopefully we get more of those interviews. And also how this whole PR thing works, and how sometimes, you kind of like suck it in, but like at the same time, as fans, in a respectful way, we can voice our disagreement, and we can voice our perspective to those media outlets and say like, hey, you crossed the line. you cross the line. Because a lot of times the fans do have a voice, and they are heard if we are voicing ourselves respectfully. So I feel like going forward, if we're able to put forth that like discontent to any instances that happen like this, I feel like it would put those type of media reporters or those type of hosts in check, where it's like, okay, this is not going to fly with the fans. So I gotta do my job correctly. But anyways, let me know what you guys thought. If you guys have seen the interviews, what you guys thought of that interview from the brunch. If you've seen the other interview that I'm referencing, I'm gonna try to link the second interview, the 15-minute one, in the description. If you guys haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out. It was actually like a really good interview. I like the vibe and everything. But let me know what you guys thought of the interview and the process, of any other interviews that you've seen them do while they're in this whole press tour. And hopefully we have more content coming out from them in the future. Obviously, I know it's been literally like 2 or 3 weeks since they dropped 0%, so they haven't even thought of or even started. Probably the production team is already working on it, but we probably won't have any like new music or a full album for a bit. So I'm just hoping that we get some other cute content that we can like focus on, something positive, something that keeps us going until we get the official album. But as always, thank you for being such an amazing community, all our Santos Bravos fans. I don't know what our fandom name is yet, so we're just going to call ourselves Santos Bravos fans, because I can't think of anything else that's gender neutral. But anyways, leave me your comments. Let me know what you thought, and I'll see you next time.